rivals go head-to-head this weekend when the Pirates face the Cubs at Wrigley.
Swing and a miss. He struck him out.
The pregame at 3 Eastern, first pitch at 4. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd Podcast.
It's funny what wins in sports, isn't it? It's always the same thing. Who won the Super Bowl this year? New England. Were they better than Seattle? They were late. Tom Brady dominated the fourth. Ohio State beat Oregon. Were they better than Oregon? They were late. 14-0. 2 touchdowns to none. Buckeyes, fourth quarter. Who wins the Kentucky Derby? Who won the World Series? The old cliche, not how you start, it's how you finish. Duke beat Wisconsin twice this year. Not once. Stop blaming the refs. They beat them twice. And they beat them twice because they've got the best coach in the sport, and they've got more guys who will play in the NBA and be really good NBA players. And in both games, the one in the Kohl Center, Wisconsin's less talented players couldn't stop Duke's more talented players. And last night, late, Duke's more talented players, often freshmen, were better than upperclassmen for Wisconsin. We're forgetting that. Bo Ryan can blame the refs, Badger fans, poor sports, blaming refs. They beat you twice. Twice. Both times, same thing. They were better late. When your 2 stars, Winslow and Okafor, are on the bench for a long stretch, you call up freshmen, and they're better than your upperclassmen. Translation, we're better. Duke was. By the way, Kentucky was a really good team. Couldn't beat Wisconsin once. Duke beat them twice, soundly. By the way, Kentucky didn't miss for the final 12 minutes. When Michigan State beat Louisville, why did Michigan State win? Because in the second half and overtime, their defense was great. Louisville shot 6 of 32. How did Duke beat Gonzaga? That thing was close, right? It was until Duke closed on a 13-1 run. And last night, Wisconsin wasn't very good down the stretch. Sam Decker looked tired. The tank, and let's be honest, Wisconsin had a much tougher route. I'm not going to deny that. But Wisconsin down the stretch, with less talented players and maybe not quite the coach, lost to a team that has 3 NBA players and 2 will-be stars, Winslow and Okafor. You can talk all you want about refs. Even Mike Krzyzewski said it after the game why Duke is again national champs.
We're fabulous down the stretch. I mean, I don't know how you can be any better than we were. I'm proud of my team.
I watched Duke play 5 of their 6 games. The first game I didn't see a ton of. I just saw highlights. And in every game, Duke won the exact same way. Some games, they trailed early. Some games like this one, they trailed by 8, 9 points. Some games tied at half. They were great the last 5 games when it mattered most. That's why the Patriots beat the Seahawks. It wasn't about talent. It should be noted, why did Wisconsin beat Kentucky? They were better in the last 5 minutes. Bo Ryan, who's never been my favorite guy because I think you can age 2 ways in life. Cranky, rigid, controlling guy never ends well. Or a guy who grows organically, accepts the change. Guys that are old and rigid when things don't go their way, true colors show, character flourishes right there, right? Bo Ryan had a player wanting to transfer, went on Mike, and Mike embarrassed himself in the university. Bo Ryan, after the game last night, taking shots at the refs. But here was my favorite Bo Ryan quote last night after the game. He sort of took a subtle shot at Kentucky and Duke, known as one-and-done schools, although that's overplayed. Here's Bo Ryan, coach of Wisconsin.
We don't do a rent-a-player, try to take a fifth-year guy or whatever, and that's okay. If other people do that, that's great. I like trying to build from within. It's just the way I am. Yeah,
it's funny. Nobody recruited a player out of high school named Diamond Stone, a 6'11", 265-pound player who is seen as a one-and-done. He's rated the 7th best player, 5th best player, 4th best player in the country. He is likely seen as a 1 or a 2-and-done guy. You know who wanted him? Oh, funny. Bo Ryan did. So did UConn. So did Maryland. And he chose Maryland. He'll be a great player and likely a 1-2 and done. So Bo Ryan saying, I don't do that, rent a player, sounds like the guy who's 38, lives with mom, works at Texaco, and says, I'd never drive a Ferrari. You know, they're inefficient. They're dangerous. Dude, you still live with your mom. It's chunky guy who says, I'd never date a model. They're superficial. No. You play video games all day, chunky. Give me a break. Duke beat a really, really, really good Wisconsin team twice. And they beat them the same way both times. Wisconsin couldn't stop them when it mattered. Players who will play at a high level at the NBA. Good to have you in today. I loved one of the things I've said about Yankee fans, the oppressed Yankee fans, beaten down by the sport for so many years. They look at the sport and all the cheaters, and they just want a fair shake. Yesterday, A-Rod announced to the Yankee fans, and listen to this ovation. Wonderful.
And A-Rod works a walk. Yankees first base runner.
Is that A-Rod being introduced to the crowd? If you did not hear, it was 70-30 in favor of A-Rod coming out. I don't see it as an indictment to you fans. Like a lot of fans, we criticize fans who like cheer the guy who does HGH or cheer the guy with baggage. The way I look at it is that fans know that A-Rod's going to get booed everywhere, all right? And he's dysfunctional, but he's our dysfunctional. Everybody's got a drunk uncle, but he's your drunkle. And so you put your arms around him because you know everybody else mocks him. I don't think it's an indictment of Yankee fans cheering A-Rod yesterday. I don't. I think it's what fans do. My only problem with fans is when they call radio shows and pretend they're objective. You're all abject homers, and that's fine. Just own it. So I thought it was great yesterday that A-Rod got about a 65-35, 70-30 split. It's okay. It's not an indictment. You know he's got all sorts of baggage, but you know what? He's your guy. And if you don't support him and you're his family, nobody else will, and I completely get it.
Colin Cowherd. Looking good. Well, looking okay.
The Thundering Herd Podcast.
With the name Duke, it was a great basketball game between two really good teams. I don't think either team's all-time great. I didn't think Kentucky was all-time great. And by the way, when Kentucky played Wisconsin, I thought Wisconsin controlled the game. I thought both times I saw Duke play Wisconsin late, I thought Duke controlled the game. So I'm not somebody bashing Wisconsin. When I watched Wisconsin play Arizona, I thought Wisconsin controlled the game. I thought Wisconsin controlled every game they were in this year that I saw them play, except the two times I saw them play Duke. Duke's got better players and a better coach. So I want to guess the ratings. Obviously, if Kentucky was in it against Duke, it would have been through the roof. It would have been an all-timer because you had history. So it's not going to be as big. But Wisconsin's still a big Big Ten school with a lot of alums. The Midwest, the Big Ten fans have a little low self-esteem. They've been mocked through the years. They've gotten beat up, so they're very loyal. 16-9 was a little much. I slept on it last night. That's a little much. How about 16-6? You know what? I'm going to go higher. How about 17-8? 17-4? 17-1? So my guess was 16-9, and it is a 17-1. Ain't bad, brother. That's not terrible. That's amazing. Uncle Ronaldo does it again. How does he do it, children? So after the game last night, Bo Ryan, and, I just don't like officials and calling and in my lifetime, and I'm serious, I've probably watched 4 or 5 games in my entire life. that officials decided the game. I mean, really? In my entire, and I'm not even sure if there's that many. Because if a referee butchers something in the second quarter, you've got time to overcome it. Humans play the game. Humans officiate the game. And Wisconsin was just called for 2 fouls in the first half. So, I mean, settle down. It was Duke stars that were in foul trouble. Kaminsky was raking Okafor, and he wasn't getting called for a lot in that game. But after the game, Bo Ryan, and this is who he is, the other thing I did not like, the one call in the game I didn't like, was late in the game, for the record, Wisconsin trailed by 5, and even if they got the ball back, they were so inefficient late offensively. But that tip ball out of bounds that you saw like 9 replays of, okay, so let's go to that play. Number one, the Badgers should have gotten the ball back. They didn't. Duke got it. But CBS showed 8 replays. 8! And 1 appeared to show a tip. Kind of. And by the way, when referees see the replay, they're not like you in your dorm. They're not like you, Badge, flat screen TV. It gets really quiet. The arena's got 35,000 people. They're looking at a tiny television set. They don't get to hear the analysts. They're peering down in this tiny screen with no analysts, huge arena, 30,000 fans, and there's 8 replays, and 1 sort of appeared to move the ball. They're not in a flat screen. They're not in a quiet room. They're not listening to commentators. They're not sitting at home. The room, that's not the environment they're in. So the first part of that, as Jay Billis said, even if Wisconsin gets that ball, they couldn't do anything offensively late in the game.
They tried to get in some stuff. From the 10-minute mark on, they didn't run anything. They didn't move the ball to the second side, never got it to a third side. And you got to give Duke's defense credit for that.
To me, the game came down to this. 2:30 left in the game. Badgers couldn't get a ball to hit the rim. Couldn't get a shot off. Couldn't get a shot off. And by the way, if I told you before the game that Sam Decker, one of only 2 players for Wisconsin that's really going to play in the NBA, would go 0 for 6 on threes, do you think they would have won? I mean, listen, if I told you Sam Decker looked overmatched and you'd have to rely just on Kaminsky against a team that's got 3 NBA players, 2 of them will be stars against Coach K, you think you would have won? So, you know, the whole Bo Ryan thing, can you imagine Coach K whining about refs and taking shots on one-and-done players after the game? No, you can't, because he wins and loses with dignity. And Bo Ryan, once again in crisis, shows his true colors. But I thought Bo Ryan, and this is, I say this, people age differently. There's 2 ways to age. You can be the cool older person. I like coaches that evolve. I like coaches like Kevin Sumlin, Texas A&M, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, Mike Krzyzewski. They evolve with the game. They're always willing to try new stuff. They don't have to control things. They understand the game evolves, they evolve, and I like guys like that. Guys that I struggle with are the Bobby Knights, rigid, controlling, and when they lose control, the Woody Hayes, the Bobby Knights, they can't change. They don't embrace one-and-dones. Bo Ryan struggles with one-and-dones because he can't control that player. And Bo Ryan needs to control everything like a lot of guys age that way. They've got to control everything, and they don't relate well to change, especially cultural change. And Bo Ryan wants to control the player. He went on Mike and bitched about it. Remember that? He went on, when there was a player wanting to transfer, he went on Mike and made a fool of himself because he couldn't control the player. Bo needs to control everything. Bobby Knight needs to control everything. Woody Hayes needs to control everything. And the world's changing. The player now has power. And so when he mocks everybody for these one-and-dones, they went after a great high school player this year, I think from Milwaukee, and they lost out on him. And he's a one-and-doner. So come on, don't be that guy. Don't be the old cranky guy. You want one-and-doners too. It's not like Wisconsin wouldn't have accepted Jahlil Okafor. I mean, come on. Wisconsin's recruiting all these great players too. Gonzaga wants them too. It's just that there's like 4 schools that get them. Oh, yeah, just give me a break. I thought it was great sports. I really did. I thought yesterday was one of those days that was outstanding. I thought the baseball was really good. I'll say this. My staff gave me this morning. Look at this. It's pretty amazing. Like you either like it or you don't. I'm not going to try to dissuade or persuade you. 6 teams posted shutouts. 3 starters carried no hitters into the 6th. Of all the games yesterday, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I mean, somebody scored 1, 2 runs in 75% of the games. That's the sport now. Yesterday, teams hit 214. So I think you either like it or you don't. I think baseball is going to gravitate toward athleticism and speed because nobody's hitting, and therefore guys who can get on base, first to third in a single, second to home on a single. I think a great example of what baseball is becoming, and I'm not saying it's good or bad. I like speed and athleticism and stolen bases. I think the Kansas City Royals are what baseball is becoming. And Boston Red Sox a year ago or 2 years ago sat down, according to a story I think I read from Peter Gammons a couple years ago or a year ago, and Boston decided we're going to get more athletic. I don't need great baseball players. I need good baseball players who are athletes because that's what the sport's becoming. You've got to be able to manufacture runs because not many guys are hitting the baseball. You go look at those scores yesterday, 4-1, 2-1, 2-0. Philadelphia shutout, Milwaukee shutout, Minnesota shutout, Yankees had a run, Nats a run, White Sox a run. That's the sport. And a lot of people like that baseball. A lot of people are into it. I'm okay with it.
You're in the Herd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
The game last night got massive ratings. It really is incredible. If you look at the NFL, something's happening culturally. It's a television phenomena. I mean, maybe a guy like maybe I should bring the president of ESPN on or one of these big hotshot guys who runs ABC or CBS like Les Moonves. The ratings for television sports in America are through the roof. Everybody's watching sports. Even baseball that's struggling nationally with ratings gets huge local ratings. And I don't know if it's because it's the only thing you can't DVR, but ratings, even when the quality is average, they're going through the roof. I mean, I watched that game last night. You can't get that kind of drama with a sitcom. You can't get, I don't care how good CSI is. You don't get that kind of, there are certain things you're not going to see in scripted dramas. It's not always a happy ending. Sports gives you controversy, which most networks aren't going to allow with their programming. HBO will. But your CBS, your ABC, your NBC, your Fox, they're going to avoid mostly on these broadcast networks, read broad a set of eyes, middle America. They're not going to get too sexual, too controversial. But sports gives you controversy. It gives you drama. The villain sometimes wins and the bad guy loses. I find sports so much more compelling on a regular basis than I do anything else on television. And I'll occasionally find a show like Pickers, or Aerial America, where I like it for a while. Those are good shows. But in the end, I always go back to sports programming. It's just really interesting. I don't even, I've said this. I don't even like car racing. I don't really get it. I guess I'm rooting for exhaustion. I don't really get it. I mean, are you rooting? I don't really get it. I'm rooting for gasoline fumes. I don't get it. But I'll say this. If it's a NASCAR race and there's 13 laps to go, I'll stay there. If it's Jimmy Johnson and whoever and they're car to car. I won't do that with a sitcom. I won't do that with a scripted drama. So I thought last night was terrific. Terrific American television. The other thing is, speaking of, I was saying before we went to break in the last hour, I like serious people. And I've always felt in the NFL, the only 2 things I need you to do absolutely as a quarterback. Only 2 things. I don't need you to be a great runner. I don't need you to have a huge arm. I don't need you to be the smartest quarterback in the league like Andrew Luck. I don't. You got to have the ability to throw the ball accurately and be mature. And I find in my life the one common thread between all the successful people, they like the process. They don't diet. Diets don't work. There's a study out now. Diets don't work. They don't work. You either enjoy the process of eating good food, you like salads, you like fish, or you waste money on diets. It's Louis C.K. is a comedian. But even in the world of writing jokes, he is a serious craftsman. Louis C.K., Colin Quinn, Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, they are performers. They're craftsmen. Okay, Jimmy Kimmel's not screwing around all day, walks on stage and is funny. Same with Jimmy Fallon. Those guys are craftsmen. And you have to like the process. If you don't like the process, then you look for quick fixes like diets. Bill Belichick loves the process of film breakdown. That's why he's great at it. Nick Saban loves the process of recruiting. That's why he's great at it. And when I look at all these coaches that succeed in sports and these quarterbacks, you either love the process, which a lot of people call the grind. Every person I know who loves the process is successful, period. The people looking for quick fixes, I'll play the lottery, I'll go on a diet, I'll trade this guy for a superstar. No, you either like the St. Louis Cardinals, you enjoy building, you like that daily go to the ballpark, elevate your minor league system. You either like that or you don't. The St. Louis Cardinals do. You can tell the St. Louis Cardinals like the process. The Angels, I don't know how they won 98. They're just spending big money on guys past their prime. Like, you either like it or you don't. I remember, again, going back to this, about 3 years ago, I was trying to get a pilot on CBS. I'm just mentioning that because it was kind of jarred a memory in my head. And I remember they invited me out for an afternoon to sit in the casting. It's one of the most fascinating things I've ever done. So I sat in this room with like 4 people, and they were finding the people that were going to be in my pilot. One after another, after another, after another. It was a long day. And I sat there for a few hours, and it was 100 actors and 100 actresses. Most very attractive people, right? It's Hollywood. But what was amazing to me, that about 75, and actors are flakes to begin with, but about 75% of them were just not prepared. Just not prepared. And then about 25% of them walked in, all the lines memorized. In fact, I remember one woman in particular was like, I got 2 different takes on this character. Can I read for both? And she was seamless. Didn't get the part, but when she left the room, people went like, she was young. They're like, gonna be a star. Completely understands, even in flaky Hollywood, the serious actor and actress thrives, flourishes. So as we get ready for the NFL draft, it's coming up. As we watch all these sporting events, Kobe Bryant loves practice. That's why it's Kobe Bryant. Swaggy P likes to be recognized at a mall and play the games. The great ones love the grind. They do. So yesterday, A-Rod comes out. Can I hear the announcement again when A-Rod hit the field at Yankee Stadium yesterday? John, I want to hear this one more time.
Batting 7th, the Yankees' designated hitter, number 13, Alex Rodriguez. Number 13.
That's about 65-35 in his favor. Joe Girardi said after the game, listen, we're a forgiving society. People are forgiving A-Rod.
As humans, we're going to make mistakes. That's the bottom line. We've all made mistakes. We live in a society that pulls for people to come back and make something of their lives, and I think we're fortunate because of that.
Yeah, I get it. I totally do. I mean, he's your roid user. He's going to get booed everywhere. He's yours. And so if you don't support him, nobody else is. I get it.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Couple of things. LaShawn McCoy says Chip Kelly doesn't respect stars. I don't think he likes or respects the stars. I'm being honest. He told the Philadelphia Inquirer on Monday. I think he likes the fact that it's Chip Kelly and the Eagles. First of all, he doesn't – the idea that Bill Belichick and Chip Kelly are willing to get rid or let guys like Shane Vereen and Stephen Ridley and LaShawn McCoy go It's because you're running backs, and you're 27 or 28 or 29, and it's not the most important position on the field. You want to know what coaches are called that are reliant to stars? Unemployed in the National Football League. System should trump stars outside of quarterback. Andrew Luck, give him the mansion. Give him the casino. Get him whatever he wants. Give Andrew Luck, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. Give him what they want. Outside of that, the system is more important. Gronk is worth less than 1 point. Gronk. So J.J. Watt is worth less than a point. So I'm not going to overpay for LaShawn McCoy. Sorry. I'm just not. The other thing is, with Mike Krzyzewski winning another title, his 5th national championship, everybody says he's all-time great, but he's not as good as John Wooden. I think it's harder to win today. I think what Coach K is doing is more impressive than what John Wooden did. And I'm in Los Angeles right now, and this won't go over well, but here's why it's harder today. Because John Wooden got to keep his players for 4 years. Mike Krzyzewski constantly has to recruit players. They're gone. The transitional nature of college basketball has made it much harder to remain great every year. John Wooden got a player, kept them for 4 years. You don't get to do that anymore. You don't get to do that anymore. Imagine being a stockbroker and told any stock you bought, you had to sell within 6 months. It'd be a little harder, right, to get 9% returns a year? Wouldn't it? Oh, this is a great stock. Sorry, got to buy a new one. It just left. Got to sell it. John Wooden didn't have to deal with that. And by the way, college basketball, college sports now, because of scholarship reduction and the money being spread out, there's a lot of good teams. To win a national championship, now you got to win 6 games in the tournament. I think back in John Wooden's heyday, you had to win 3, maybe 4. Now you got to win 6. In the mid-majors, there was no Gonzaga. There was no Butler. I mean, it was a handful of heavyweight teams. So that's nothing against John Wooden. But, by the way, Duke academically, and UCLA is a great school, Duke academically is tougher. Some kids just can't get into Duke. And also, Krzyzewski's done it in arguably the toughest conference in college basketball. I don't think the Pac-12 was. I mean, I can tell you the Northwest schools as a kid growing up were not very good. Either was Arizona and Arizona State 30 years ago. So I think people forget this about John Wooden at UCLA. I think a lot of people forget this about John Wooden, is that when John Wooden was at UCLA, his first 10 years at UCLA, he wasn't always winning the conference. And then all of a sudden, in 62, 63, 64, the run started. He'd already been there 10 years. Okay? He'd already been there 10 years. If you go look at what Mike Krzyzewski did at Duke in the ACC, that guy took over a lousy program. Took him to the NIT the first year. It took him a couple years. It wasn't as transitional then. Duke was a no-name program. But by his 4th year, they were big time. By his 6th year, they were the NCAA runner-up. And they were a regular Final Four team by his 6th and 7th year. So I know it's sacrilegious to ever, and I'm not criticizing John Wooden, but what he's doing now in a tougher conference, in a tougher tournament, in a sport where you have to constantly find new players, just imagine that. Imagine if you were a sales guy, you're a stockbroker, and you had to constantly reload. Think about every business person that listens to my show. If you run a car dealership, and every year you had to go find 8 new salespeople because the great ones left. Or 40 years ago, there was less mobility, and if you hired a great salesperson, he stayed for 2 decades. What's easier? It's hard now. It is hard to do what coaches do now. I mean, God, look how good Kentucky is. They were awful 2 years ago. I mean, 2 years ago, they were awful. Clark, you're in the herd on ESPN Radio. Clark, go ahead.
Hey, Colin. It's actually Mark, but thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it. I wouldn't say that it's harder today. It's just different. I mean, back in Wooden's day, freshmen couldn't play. he would have won 11 in a row if Kareem had played his freshman year. Plus, if you didn't win the conference back then, you weren't in the tournament.
Well, yes, but again, UCLA had a guy helping fund the UCLA program, and because the media was very tiny, we didn't find out about that guy until, post-Wooden era. In today's world, this idea that cheating was far worse 40 years ago. People don't understand this. You didn't have social media. You didn't have message boards. You didn't have cable television. You didn't have sports blogs. I mean, Wooden didn't deal with any of that stuff. John Wooden, there was 2 networks airing college basketball games, and, let's be honest. Newspaper guys knew JFK was having affairs. They didn't talk about it. Wink, wink. You can't get away with that stuff now. Gary Hart's on a boat for an hour with a woman, Donna Rice. It's headline news. So Wooden didn't have to deal with the social media. He didn't have to monitor his players on Twitter. He didn't have to deal with his constant recruiting. Recruiting now, I talked to a college basketball coach a couple weeks ago. It's a 12-month deal. I mean, recruiting now in college basketball is awful. It is a 12-month circus. It's tough. And by the way, Jay Wright's built a great program at Villanova. If he doesn't win a bunch of games in the tournament, fans now are more empowered than they've ever been because they pay more for tickets. They've got their social media, Twitter outlets. Fans are harsher. The criticism's broader. It's not easy to do what these guys do. Tony, you're in the herd. Thanks for calling, bud. Fire away. Go ahead, Tony.
I love your show.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm in wine and liquor sales myself, and I agree. Each year we get new products to have to pitch to people, and the new ones are tough to do. It's a lot easier to sell the tried and true brands that we see every year.
Sure.
So it is a lot harder. Each time we get a new brand, you sit there and you roll your eyes. It's like, I'm not going to develop this brand.
Yeah,
I completely agree with you.
Yeah, like pharmaceutical sales. Everybody can sell Viagra, okay? It's the new stuff that you got to teach your salespeople what it is, and then you got to go and hope the doctors let the pretty pharmaceutical sales girl in, and then you got to sell the doctor who's very loyal to certain brands. Hey, the minute you get a great player, he's gone after a semester. John Wooden didn't have to deal with any of that stuff. It's hard. The fact that Duke won a 5th national championship with 4 freshmen. Won 6 games. Good for him. He's a heck of a coach. He is a tremendous coach. Everybody, it's just funny. We over-romanticize. We really do. Like, nothing against Babe Ruth. Okay, Babe Ruth was obviously great. But he was playing against roofers and sandwich makers. People had 3rd and 4th jobs. Have you ever seen a picture of Babe Ruth? He looks like John Goodman. No, really John Goodman. Got a gut. He weighed like 210. That's all he weighed. And about 140 of it right above the belt. It's Babe Ruth was great. He didn't have to face a slider. Dominican players, African-American players, Asian players. It's a different world back then. You're facing the world's best athletes now. Not a guy who, after the game, goes over and hammer and nails a roof to make his house payment. Athletes now train 12 months a year.
Technology gone bad. This is the Thundering Herd podcast.
I got to tell you, the Bo Ryan comes off as cranky to me. I think one and dones is part of the sport, and I don't have a problem with him. If I was a college basketball recruiter, I would take one and dones every day. It's the old saying: some girls you date, some you marry. The reality is, for these top programs, you're kind of dating. You're not in a long-term relationship. Bruce Pearl has been a coach for a long time now at Auburn, is joining us in the broadcaster as well. Bo Ryan kind of, I don't know. Our coaches, can they be a little phony, Bruce, with all this one-and-done negativity when they would take a guy if they could get him?
There's a part of you that roots for Bo Ryan because of the way they look and the way they do it and the way they have discipline and, don't turn it over and don't foul and have 4-year guys. And so there's more, you can look at it like, okay, he might have been a little cranky. He might be have a little edge going, look, I don't like the way everybody else does it, but at the same time, you kind of admire the way they do it. And there might have been a little part of you rooting for Wisconsin because of the way they did it. So maybe Bo was talking about them more than he was talking about anybody else.
If you took a poll, Bruce, of your 50 best friends in college coaching, who are they rooting for last night?
I think they're rooting for Wisconsin because Bo Ryan started from humble beginnings, a Division III coach, worked his way up. He'd been at a lot of different levels, and that's not to say that Coach K didn't work his way up. Obviously, he did. But when he's looking for his fifth and Bo's looking for his first, I think the coaching fraternity. I mean, look, we all kind of root for the underdog a little bit, but I was curious myself, Colin, as to who I would root for because I got respect for both programs. It's just that I've known Bo. I know Bo a little better. I know Gary Close, Greg Gart, some of those Wisconsin assistants, but I did find myself kind of rooting for the way Wisconsin's doing it, which is a little different than the way, most of the top programs do it every year with, the one and dones or with guys that don't stay forever. And I don't blame them. I had some fifth-year seniors this year. Bo could have been talking about the fifth-year senior thing. I think he was a little bit. But that's the way I got to do it to get it done at a program that isn't as established as Wisconsin.
Bruce Pearl joining us. What makes Krzyzewski great? I mean, it's easy, we can all say, well, he gets good players. What's the secret sauce to win when he had guys that stayed for 4 years and now one and done? What is it? Just IQ? Is he smarter?
Yeah, it's all the above. It's the same formula that Pat Summitt had at Tennessee. It's what Gino does at UConn. There's a brand there, and there's something that comes with it. First of all, those kids are even honored that they get an opportunity to go there, that Coach K thinks they're good enough to be able to be worthy of a scholarship there. Then the second thing is nobody on earth is more experienced. I mean, look, he's coached Olympians. He's coached pros. He's coached internationally, the best in the world. He has seen and done it all, and he's as sharp as a razor. And so, look, he's the best. And then, therefore, those kids have got great confidence in him, great buy-in to what he's selling, to what he's doing. It's obviously a formula that works. There's no doubt. There's just no doubt. There's a sense of certainty, and he's done it again in Indianapolis. This is the second championship he's won in Indy.
I said before the game is I picked Duke to win, and I said I don't do it with a great deal of conviction, but generally speaking in big games, when I find two good teams, who's the best player? And like Tom Brady in Seattle, I said, Brady will be the most important player. I'm going to take them. I kind of felt, and I said, Okafor is the best player on the floor, in my opinion. He'll make plays late. And I thought he was really crucial on a couple loose balls and a couple baskets. To you, was there a pivotal moment in the game last night, Bruce?
Yeah, I think, interestingly enough, I think a pivotal moment was when Winslow did not get called for what would have been his fourth foul, which was an obvious charge. And I thought that was a pivotal moment. I think that bothered Wisconsin. And but I picked Duke also the same way that you did, in the sense that I wasn't certain. I thought Frank Kaminsky was the best player in the floor going in. I still think after it was all said and done that Frank Kaminsky was the best player. Obviously Wisconsin. But Tyus Jones was incredible, and the plays that he made, and the fact that Grayson Allen, was able to step up and going 5 for 5 from the foul line. Jones 7 for 7 from the foul line. Those guys were able to go by Wisconsin's guards, get to the rim, and make plays, and the cream rose to the top. Duke is more talented than Wisconsin. I don't care how many freshmen they got out there. And the cream rose, like you said, Okafor at the end when it mattered.
Yeah. Their recruiting is now a 12-month business for all you college basketball coaches. Is talent better or worse today than it was 15 years ago when you got into this business? For high school players, are they better or worse?
Much better, much more physically developed, much more mature. They've got professional trainers. Those freshmen at Duke have played all over the world and all over the country, and it's different than 25 years ago freshmen. It's not even close. So I do think, I think it's better. And then, Colin, you know what's interesting? Look at the ratings that this tournament got. I mean, it's March Madness every year, but the numbers are incredible. And yet we've spent a lot of time talking about, well, the game's not really watchable. I didn't want that game to end last night.
I know,
I didn't want the Wisconsin-Kentucky game to ever end. It was that good. So, I mean, what about that? I mean, what about the ratings, and what about was it just the matchups? Was it just that we had Duke, Kentucky, Wisconsin in the last two games?
No, you know what I think? First of all, I think live sports, college football, NFL, ratings are through the roof. College basketball had a great year. World Cup, Olympics had a very good year. I think live sports is now the best thing on TV. And I also think, Bruce, and I'm guilty of this, the NBA is the NBA, college is college. We have to just accept that they're almost different sports, and I think each relates to their respective communities very well. I think for a college basketball fan, he loves his sport right now. That's what I feel. Yeah.
Thank you. Because guess what? You're not the majority in the media. I mean, there's this thing called zone in college. There's this thing called a help side defender that when Wisconsin was driving to the basket, 3 Duke players were already in the lane or on their way into the lane. That in the NBA, they're not allowed to go. They're not allowed to be there. The game is different. There is, by virtue of the rules, more freedom of movement, more one-on-one. And yes, guess what? The NBA players put 5 guys out there that can play. But can you appreciate the intensity, the passion, the effort, and yes, we got to do a few things to open up the lane, but I agree. They are different games, and they're both beautiful to watch.
Yes, and the reality is, in Madison, Wisconsin, when I watch those fans, they don't love that basketball any less than Clipper fans love the Clippers. They're just different sports, so I think the college game works in the college communities, and Bruce Pearl's joining us. I love talking to you, Coach. Thank you so much.
Colin, always a pleasure, my friend.
Herd brought to you by Werner, the official ladder of the NCAA basketball championships. And I'm guilty of that, too. I mean, it's not the college game, unless it's the top teams. I really like watching Gonzaga, Duke. I can't tolerate that Virginia stuff. It wears me out. But, I love the old Phoenix Suns with Steve Nash, the Lakers Showtimes. I like those teams. That's what I like. But I think in the small communities, they love their college coach dominating the players, and they love the efficiency of it and the Hoosier feel of it. And last night was great American sports. The numbers are, I think, it really is. And I know nobody cares about this stuff except me and about 6 listeners. But the numbers in sports are going through the roof. And there's a sense in television right now, nobody can quite figure it out. It's like, why are these ratings for all these sports going through the roof? And I think it is with all the technologies. You can't tape delay sports. You got to watch it live. And I think there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of scripted dramas, comedies that just aren't that compelling. There's just, sports is human drama. I mean, more than anything last night, I'm sitting there with my wife, and she's not into sports. And I'm like, she watched it. I was like, this is great. This is urgent. This matters. This is history. This is fantastic television. I just loved it. I just loved last night. Didn't love what Bo Ryan said after, but I loved it.
Putting style in black T-shirts. It's Colin Cowherd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
Some of these guys out there that complain about one-and-dones, Justin just emailed us. He said, Bo Ryan needs to understand that without the one-and-done rule, he wouldn't even get to the championship game, which is a great point. The one-and-done allows Wisconsin to be a power because their players don't leave early. It allows Gonzaga to win 2 or 3 games in the tournament. If Kentucky, if Okafor didn't leave Duke and he came back for 2 more years, you think that game was close last night? If Okafor was a junior, that game's a blowout. If Winslow's a junior, the reality is the one-and-done helps all the lesser programs. It doesn't hurt it. It helps it. What are you complaining about? Seriously, one of the things that helps everybody in college football, like in the SEC, Nick Saban's told me this before. He goes, I always have a young team because I recruit such great players. They demand to play early when they're not quite ready, and then they leave after their junior year. He goes, so my turnover is much greater than most coaches. It's not an excuse. He's right. If Alabama players all redshirted and all stayed for 4 years, you think Alabama's good now. It's the transitional nature of the sport that allows other teams to beat Alabama. Because Alabama, Ohio State, USC always get the best players. Your best hope is they lose a lot of them early, and so they have to put freshmen on the field. Last year, USC played 8 true freshmen on offense at times. If those guys are 8 fifth-year seniors, those 5-star guys, you're not beating USC. It's the one and done and the transitional nature of Kentucky and Duke. If Duke returned all those guys, they'd win it again next year. Duke would win the championship, but instead they're going to have to replace them. So that mobility is your friend, Bo. Wisconsin doesn't get the greatest. They get some. They'll get a nice player. Sam Decker was a big high school star. Kaminsky, good player. You're not getting Duke's players. So these people complain about it. It allows Gonzaga and Butler. You think Butler is getting to the national championship 25 years ago? Oh, give me a break. With Shelvin Mack? Please. You're not getting anywhere near the Elite Eight. Because all the teams that you beat would have NBA players in their 5th year. I mean, I grew up with college basketball. Patrick Ewing stayed for 3 years. Patrick Ewing was ready to go to the NBA at about 16. And he stayed for 3 years. Christian Laettner could have gone early. Man, when I watched those Christian Laettner 30 for 30 doc, wow. God, he was good. The other thing, Stanzik, I was talking to you during the break. This is weird, and I don't know why this is that, fans are always like, you're a bandwagon fan. I'm not a fan. This is a business. I like sports. I like watching the games. I like LeBron James as a talent, but I've always liked the best player in the league at the time. I loved Magic. I love Bird. I love MJ. I've always loved the best player in the NBA while he's the best player. He's the most fun to watch. I love Dan Marino. I love John Elway. I like Tom Brady. I like Andrew Luck. I've always liked great quarterbacks. I don't root against them. I like Troy Aikman. I don't know what it is, Stanzik, but I like Duke. Why would I not like excellence? They have the best coach, the best brand. Why would I root against that? Now, I get if you're Carolina. I get if you're a rival. But, a lot of times fans are like, you like traditional powers. Yeah, because they have the best players. Yes. I'm not going to lie to you. I really like watching LeBron play, and MJ, and Bird. If you watched Magic Johnson play live, how the hell could you not root for him? I mean, he was incredible. I rooted for Bo Jackson. I rooted for Tom Seaver. Yeah, I mean, it's just the underdog story. They have less talent. I like what, when I go to a restaurant, I order the best steak, not the 13th, and root for it. I don't get it. I really don't. Yeah, it's interesting. So all you people that don't like the one and done, you complain about it. Anthony Davis would have been a senior this year at Kentucky. Hey, Wisconsin, think you would have won that game against Kentucky if Anthony Davis is a senior? You're down 22 at half. It's over. The one and done allows you, Bo Ryan, to have a chance to beat Kentucky. I've always thought college football, I wonder if they get to a point where it's 2 and done. You know what I mean? Is there going to be a lawsuit where some player, because right now you have to go to 3 years. Now, you don't have to play for 3. You can redshirt and play 2 years. But I always thought it would hurt college football if that happened. It'd get too transitional. Matthew, you're in the herd, bud, on ESPN Radio. Matthew, go ahead.
Thanks for taking the call, Colin. I think the Duke very much deserved to win, but Bo Ryan was right on with his critique of the refereeing. Duke was doing a lot of charges. It was bad playground basketball. They were running people over and getting the calls, and that happens far too much. The offense is ludicrously favored in officiating. There's no reason for it. The defense has just as much right to the space, and I thought Bo Ryan was totally right on that. It was really lame officiating.
Well, they beat you twice, and, and they've got better players, and Krzyzewski's a better coach, so, you can be mad at it, but they beat you twice, and they beat you twice the same way. At the end of the game, in both games, you couldn't make big shots, and they did. I mean, if you go look at the league, it's really not hard to figure the world of sports out. Who won the Super Bowl? Patriots. Why? They were better than Seattle in the last 8 minutes. Who won the World Series? Giants. Why? They were better in the last game. If you go look, we broke it down this morning. It's amazing. If you go look at the final, the Elite Eight in the NCAA basketball tournament this year, basically whoever played well late won in every game. Go look at the Elite Eight games. Why did Duke beat Gonzaga? They won on a 13-1 run late. It was tied. Why did Michigan State beat Louisville? Because in the second half and overtime, Louisville couldn't hit a shot, 6-32. Last night, late, Duke hit shots, Wisconsin didn't. Why did Wisconsin beat Kentucky? Because Wisconsin was better late. Why did Kentucky beat Notre Dame? Because Kentucky went 12 minutes, the last 12 minutes, and didn't miss a field goal. I mean, you go to these games, they're all decided the same way. Super Bowl, World Series, Kentucky Derby. Go. I mean, it's every game in this tournament that was close, they were all decided the exact same way. Who won the last 5 minutes? Duke made key shots in the last 5 minutes. It's not like Duke won differently every time. Duke won the same way all tournament. Games would be close for a while. I didn't see their first game. I saw highlights of it. Duke would at some point, Duke would trail or barely lead or it's tied. And then late in the game, last 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you just couldn't get quality shots against Duke. Jay Billis, can I play that bite from earlier, Jay Billis? Jay Billis broke it down. If you watch the last 6 minutes as a Wisconsin fan and you watch it again, you watch the last 6 minutes again, Jay Billis nails it. Wisconsin just wasn't very good offensively.
They tried to get in some stuff. From the 10-minute mark on, they didn't run anything. They didn't move the ball to the second side, never got it to a third side. And you got to give Duke's defense credit for that.
No, I mean, that's the game. You can play all you want about refs. In Wisconsin, it's a bad look. You're whining. It's a bad look. I mean, wearing red in public's a bad look. Complaining about the refs and wearing red's a worse look. You lost. And by the way, Frank Kaminsky, it's not like the tank doesn't foul occasionally. I mean, Okafor was getting beat on. He got beat on in that game. The big guys always do.
Check out The Herd with Colin Cowherd weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNradio.com, and on ESPNU. The Thundering Herd Podcast. Major League Baseball on ESPN Radio. Last season, the Pirates reached the postseason for the second consecutive season, only to be sent home early after losing the wild card. Will they return for the third straight year? This weekend they face the Cubs, who have plans to make their first postseason berth since 2008. The Cubs and Pirates. The pregame at 3 Eastern, first pitch at 4. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. Two of baseball's best go head-to-head in interleague action when the Tigers head to St. Louis to face the Cardinals. That one is gone. The pregame at 7 Eastern, first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN and ESPN Radio.